He didn't kill for money, didn't kill out of rage. He killed like he was performing a ritual, right in the heart of the city, where no one knew the names of the dead. Skid Row, Los Angeles, winter of 1975. The drizzle came down steady, like the slowing heartbeat of a body turning cold. Under the dim sodium lights, someone found a man slumped next to a rusted trash bin. The first thing they saw wasn't blood. It was his face, sliced open like someone was trying to peel it off his skull. His mouth split wide to the ears, eyes slashed diagonally. The cuts were too clean, too calm. The cops showed up 20 minutes later. They found a ring of salt scattered around the victim's head, a bottle of red wine spilled nearby, the liquid mixing with blood, spreading like some ancient sacrificial rite. No signs of struggle, no ID. No one knew who he was. They called him John Doe, the name the city gives the forgotten dead. But this wasn't the first time, and it wouldn't be the last. Over the next 6 weeks, 8 more bodies turned up. Same method, same ritual, same eerie silence, cloaking the crime scenes like a ghostly seal. The cops started to get nervous, but the city didn't care, because the ones being killed were homeless. No roof, no voice, no memory. And the man killing them, he left nothing behind, took nothing, said nothing. He came and struck like a shadow, then vanished, as if death itself was learning to walk through the rotting heart of the city. Los Angeles, 1975. The city at night exploded in neon lights and car horns. But stray just 1 block off the boulevard and it all collapsed, like flipping over a painting to see the rotting canvas beneath. Skid Row, a stretch of darkness, and the smell of corpses that hadn't had time to decompose. Souls clung to life under tarps, beneath the awnings of abandoned stores, in buildings with no walls left standing. No one looked at them. No one counted. And when one of them died, no one asked. Early morning, December 13th. Police were called to a narrow alley between 2 deserted buildings. The caller was a scrap collector. "I thought he was sleeping," the man said, hands still trembling. "But when I got close, his face was gone." The body was on its back, head tilted slightly, like it was listening to something whispering from the low gray sky. But the face, if you could even call it that, had been nearly carved off. The cut started at the mouth, sliced across the cheeks, torn clean to the ears. The eyes were slashed into X's, bruised deep, the forehead gouged with 3 parallel marks, like claw scratches. The whole face looked dismantled, not out of rage, but with purpose, with ritual. The throat was torn too, one clean, deep cut, almost severing the trachea. There wasn't much blood, partly because it had already drained, partly because someone had wiped the area around the body clean. But the strangest thing was what surrounded him. A white ring of salt, evenly poured around the head. A cheap bottle of red wine, shattered at the neck, spilled at his side. 2 tiny candles, nearly burned out, still smoldering faint wisps of smoke. No ID, no sign of struggle. No one nearby knew who he was, where he came from, or why he died here. Police notes read, "No drag marks. Victim was killed at the exact spot he was found. No physical evidence left by suspect. Nothing stolen. No motive for robbery. The report was quietly filed away. Just another unsolved murder among hundreds in the area. One more case. One more body. One more number. But only a few days later, a second corpse turned up. This time in a park near the central station. Same method. Same ritual. Same silence hammering itself into the city's chest like a nail. Skid Row didn't get sirens, no red carpets, no reporters. This was the belly of poverty, where the American dream went to rot inside an empty stomach. And somewhere in those alleys, someone was killing. Not for fame, not for headlines, just to kill. Again. Precisely. Like an artist obsessed with his own ritual. People started whispering. They didn't call him a killer. They called him the Salt Man because there was always that circle of salt around the victim's head. He didn't scream, didn't leave threats, didn't bully, didn't boast. He just left behind faces that no longer existed. At first, the cops thought it was a string of violent robberies, but the way the bodies were placed, the symmetry of the wounds, the ceremonial details, it made a few detectives stop longer than they should have. And one of them, speaking just above a whisper in a back room, said, "I don't think this is a killer. I think this is someone trying to summon something from under the ground." They laughed, but only because they were scared. Summer 1964. Los Angeles hadn't yet heard the name Vaughn Greenwood. He had no psychiatric record, no major priors. He didn't resemble anyone, and no one resembled him. According to police records, his first appearance came on July 7th. A homeless man was found behind a bus stop in the Pico Union District, throat slashed, face beaten in, eyes wide open like he'd died while still awake. No blood on the ground, no drag marks. Cops thought it was a botched robbery, junkie kids. But there was one odd detail no one could explain. The victim was lying on a clean piece of cardboard, too clean for the street. A few hours later, officers picked up a young black man, early 20s, wandering near the scene. His clothes were stained with blood. He didn't resist. They asked his name. He said, "Vaughn Greenwood." Flat voice, no tremble, no sign of fear. At the station, he didn't say anything else. Didn't ask for a lawyer. Didn't ask for water. He just sat there, silent as stone, eyes locked on the wall clock, like it held something the rest of the world couldn't see. After 48 hours, with no witnesses, no weapon, and blood samples that didn't match the victim, police couldn't charge him with murder. But in a last-minute review, one detective, not the type who believed in coincidence, pulled an older report. 2 years prior, Vaughn had allegedly threatened a neighbor with a box cutter. The case had gone nowhere, no evidence. But now, it resurfaced. He was held on attempted second-degree murder, based on that past complaint and circumstantial clues from the scene. The court gave him 10 years. No press. No outrage. No one defended him. And no one watched. Vaughn Greenwood disappeared into the justice system like a stone dropped into a dry well. In prison, he didn't act out. No fights. No outbursts. But he didn't work. Didn't speak. Just watched. Other inmates called him the preacher, the silent sermon. He walked the halls like he was tracing out a ritual. Once, a guard searched his cell and found a notebook tucked in the corner of his bed. Not a journal, a collection of strange obsessive drawings. Circles inside circles, faces with no mouths, straight lines connecting a knife, a wine bottle, a flame, the same words repeated in black ink. Purify. Repeat. Complete. The warden called him in, asked what it meant. Vaughn answered with one sentence. There are things not meant to be explained in words. He was released in August 1974. No one came for him, no place to go, so he returned to Skid Row. That place was a landfill of memory, and he was its native son. The city hadn't changed much in 10 years. Skid Row was still an open wound on Los Angeles, oozing, infected, and too shameful to look at head-on. When Greenwood walked out of Chino prison, he didn't report to a halfway house, didn't ask about work, didn't contact family. He went straight downtown, slipped into the shadows, like he'd always belonged there. No one noticed him. Just another homeless man, one of thousands sleeping beneath the eaves of abandoned banks, blending to the shuffle of those chasing charity meals. But he didn't sleep, didn't line up at soup kitchens, didn't talk. He just watched. Every night, Greenwood walked dozens of blocks, hands in his pockets, face blank. But his eyes weren't on people. They watched the spaces between people, the gaps, the loneliness, the invisible among the invisible. People said he lived in a fourth-floor room off Fremont. The window was sealed with old newspapers. There was no furniture except a wooden table and a circle of white candles arranged on the floor. The landlord remembered only one thing. He never spoke. Every time he paid rent, he just nodded, held the cash between two fingers, then vanished behind the door like smoke. Each night, candlelight flickered through the door crack. And somewhere in that room, Greenwood began rewriting what he had studied in prison. But this time, not in sketches. This time, in action. The first man to die after Greenwood's return was an old drifter sleeping near an abandoned gas station. No one remembered his name. No one knew who he used to be. Only the morgue attendant had something to say. His face was cut, like someone was trying to erase every feeling that had ever lived there. The next week, a young man was found behind a supermarket, his throat sliced with surgical precision. The blood had been cleaned. A thin ring of salt was poured in a spiral around his head. Only the tired detectives, the quiet ones, began to notice a pattern. Someone was doing this with intention. Why the salt? Why the wine? Why carve the face with symmetrical cuts like a sacrificial rite? No one had answers. But when the fourth victim's file landed on the same desk, the oldest officer in the unit said, "He's doing something. This isn't just murder, it's a ritual. And every time, he does it better." Greenwood left no trail. He wasn't cocky, wasn't delusional. He moved with the care of someone carrying out a sacred mission, but not one meant for humans. To him, each body was a draft, each ritual a revision, and every cut a silent prayer. By now, no one called him by name. On the sidewalks, among Skid Row's survivors, he was known only in whispers. The man with the salt, the one who peels the face, the preacher who never speaks. They didn't know he was Vaughn Greenwood, but they knew. If you sleep where you're not supposed to, you might not wake up with your face still on. December 1974. Los Angeles was colder than usual. Wind pushed through the old buildings, making the tin roofs groan like something in pain. Down on Skid Row, people started crawling deeper into the alleyways, not because of the cold, but because they were afraid. Afraid of something no one could see. No name, no face, only its consequences. A body cooling beneath piles of trash and blood. The second victim was found behind an abandoned laundromat. Throat slit, face carved deep, parallel cuts, perfectly symmetrical. Around the body were 3 candles, a bottle of red wine, and a half-burned scrap of paper. Before police could release the information, a third victim appeared. Then a fourth, then a fifth. Within 6 weeks, 9 bodies were found scattered around downtown. All of them homeless men. All of them killed with a sharp blade, clean cuts to the throat, facial mutilation that was deliberate. No theft, no sexual assault, no signs of struggle, just silence and brutal repetition. Each scene became more intricate. One body laid on a piece of cardboard, surrounded by a ring of salt. Another had a torn sleeping bag as a pillow, a wine bottle, uncorked, resting in his hand like a chalice. Once they found a ritual circle drawn on the sidewalk with candles, ash, and cooking oil. Investigators started to panic, not because of the blood, but because of the order. We saw progression, one inspector later said. He's building something. This isn't just killing, it's evolution. The victims' identities were the second thing that paralyzed the case. Most were undocumented, no IDs, no missing persons reports. No one came forward, no photos to confirm who they'd been. The names in the coroner's log read like ghosts. John Doe, 231, John Doe, who? A string of numbers swallowed into the system, never to come out again. People started fearing sleep. At shelters, men huddled in groups of 3 or 4, but no one dared speak the killer's name out loud. They just called him the slasher, the one who carved faces. Some called him the cleaner because the bodies always looked like someone had tidied them up afterward. Rumors said that late at night, they saw a tall, thin man standing under street lamps, staring, not begging, not talking, just watching, not with anger, not with hunger, but with calculation, like he was measuring something, searching for a soul that fit the shape of death. The media finally took notice when the 8th victim turned up just 2 blocks from City Hall. But when they found out the dead man was an addict with no address, coverage stopped after 3 days. The police spokesperson issued a short statement. We cannot confirm whether these cases are connected, but we are monitoring the situation closely. That was how they closed it. A frozen sentence. An empty reassurance. Meanwhile, Vaughn Greenwood kept walking every night. Not in a hurry. Not hiding. He wasn't afraid of being caught because he knew no one was really looking for him. In his 4th-floor room, the candles still burned. He still wrote in his notebook, still marked the wall with numbers: I, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Each slash like a heartbeat in a prayer with no name. Los Angeles is a big city, but for detectives, it becomes a maze, especially when the killer leaves nothing behind. No fingerprints, no DNA, no clear motive, and, most importantly, no one has ever truly seen him. As the cases stacked up inside LAPD, an unofficial task force was formed. Just 4 people. No funding, no media support, just a corkboard full of victim photos, crime scene maps, and a timeline crowded with pins and red string. Meanwhile, Vaughn Greenwood lived in the city's lowest layer, the layer without ID, without address, without record. He drifted through abandoned churches, hourly motels, public bathrooms, never stayed more than 3 nights anywhere. No one remembered where he'd been. Skid Row was chaos. Its homeless population shifted by the day. Some died of overdoses. Some vanished without question. Some were arrested and quietly released. Detectives called the place a legal blind spot. Everything there was like radio static, distorted, fading, gone. Greenwood understood that. He knew the city never reached places it refused to see, and he had become a part of that invisibility. He killed in plain sight, one officer later wrote, but among the nameless, a corpse is just a shadow erased. One investigator, Sergeant Bell, started thinking differently. He wasn't looking for physical evidence. He was looking for behavior. Bell began walking Skid Row at night. He posed as a drifter, talked to the ones still lucid. They didn't say much. But now and then, in scattered fragments, one figure kept reappearing. A black man. Thin. Middle-aged. Didn't smoke. Didn't drink. Didn't beg. Just walked. Between 2 and 3 a.m. Sometimes stopped to look at dead rats, piles of garbage, or religious graffiti. Eyes sharp. Never rushed. Never nervous. One man said, "He's not like us. He walks like he's passing through a dream he already had." Bell knew who he was looking for, but he didn't have a name, no face, no starting point, just a shadow. Then one night, digging through old case files, Bell found the name, Vaughn Greenwood, attempted homicide, 1964, 10 years in prison, released the same month the killings began, no address, no bank account, no traceable income, but a prison psych file contained one note that made Bell stop cold. Inmate displays obsessive drawing of concentric patterns, shows signs of ritualized thought structure, does not engage in social behavior. Bell went silent. He'd seen it before, at the scenes, salt and rings, blood wiped clean, bodies arranged with intent. It was all a layout, drawn from inside the killer's mind. He circled the name Vaughn Greenwood in red. For the first time, the city had a suspect, not because he showed his face, but because he revealed his pattern of thought. Meanwhile, Greenwood kept moving. By day, he slept in public restrooms, places no one checked. By night, he walked the alleys, studied those who slept alone, marked locations fit for ritual. He didn't kill every night, only when everything was perfect, like the ingredients of a sacred ceremony falling into place. No witnesses nearby. A spot that could be cleaned. A sleeper who didn't stir. Absolute silence. And when it aligned, he struck. Not hurried, not hesitant. One slash to the throat. Facial incisions, symmetrical, sketched from memory. Wine bottle placed, salt scattered, then gone. He was a priest of shadow. No words, no messages, no boasting, no need to be remembered. He just needed the kill to be done right. Sergeant Bell wasn't the kind of detective who hunted with guns and blood. He believed in patterns, believed in habits, believed that a killer would repeat not just behavior, but the logic looping inside his own mind. He began combing through prison psych files, the addresses where Greenwood had lived before incarceration, and the abandoned churches near the murder zones. And then he found it. A fourth-floor room, rented by the hour. No paperwork. The landlord remembered the tenant, a quiet black man who paid on time and left a few weeks ago. No one had moved in since. Bell went alone. No backup. Just him. The room was dark, as if light itself had been swallowed by something else. On the floor were faint burn marks from candles. On the walls, hundreds of black ink symbols. Circles, faceless figures, scrawled cryptic names layered over one another. In the center of the room, a single table, and on it, a notebook. Bell didn't touch it, just read. Street names, victim names, coroner file numbers, body placement instructions, height, weight, ideal time of death, and in small, cramped handwriting beneath, not quiet enough. Too much bleeding. Head misaligned. Next time, cleaner. Bell stood there, and the room seemed 3 times heavier. Every page was a corpse, every word a blade. He didn't call for backup. He left in silence, knowing he had just stepped inside the killer's mind and walked back out alive. As the police prepared the case file, Greenwood kept walking the night. There were rumors. Some said they'd seen him sitting in an abandoned church, still as a monk with no God, between pews buried in dust. Others swore they saw him burying something in a vacant lot, but no one dared get close enough to see what. One man claimed he watched Greenwood sit beneath a broken street lamp for 3 hours. Didn't move, didn't blink, just waited. Waited for what? No one knew. Maybe a sign. Maybe us. When the official file was opened, Greenwood's name appeared at the top of the suspect list. But the police didn't have enough to issue a warrant. And so, even though they knew who he was, knew how he killed, knew where he might be, they had to wait. Just like his last victim, who saw him coming, but couldn't move, couldn't scream, couldn't stop what was already written. The night before the arrest order was signed, Sergeant Bell wrote a single line in his duty log. He's not hiding, he's just waiting for us to forget. Greenwood cast no shadow, not because he was invisible, but because where he stood, there was no light. No one thought he could make a mistake. He lived like a ghost, killed like a shadow, vanished like smoke before dawn could speak his name. 8, 9, 10 dead, all gone without a trace, leaving behind only unease, only the echo of absence. But that night, one of them didn't die. His name was Thomas Redfield, 38 years old, once a carpenter. Lost his job after an accident, left his right hand permanently curled. No home, no family. He slept in a patch of empty land near Main Street, inside a tent made of plastic tarp and power poles. Each night, Thomas slept with a folding knife in his grip, not because he feared monsters, but because he feared men like him, hungry, broken, and desperate. But that night, a monster did come, and it didn't come to steal. Around 2:17 a.m., Thomas felt a cold breeze graze his cheek. He opened his eyes. In front of him stood a tall, thin man, still as stone. No threat, no trembling, just a knife coming for his throat, slow and steady like a ritual rehearsed 100 times. But Thomas didn't die. He moved, not from instinct, but a fear that broke through fear itself. His left arm shot up. The blade sliced his wrist. Blood sprayed. He screamed, kicked, thrashed. The figure stepped back, still silent. But for the first time in 10 attacks, he hesitated. Thomas tore out of the tent, sprinted across the empty lot, shouting, "Someone tried to kill me! He's there! He stabbed me!" Police arrived in under 8 minutes. Thomas survived. A deep cut on his wrist, 2 slashes across the face, but most importantly, he still had eyes to see and a mouth to speak. His testimony was the first real piece in a puzzle detectives had only guessed at. He said, "He wasn't angry. There was nothing in his eyes. He came at me like he was cutting cloth. Not fast, not slow. It was like he knew I wouldn't fight back, like he'd calculated it." Thomas didn't know the man's name, but when Bell showed him an old black and white photo from 1964, it didn't take him 3 seconds. That's him. I'll never forget those eyes. Police secured a warrant to search the room Bell had found weeks earlier, the one filled with drawings, symbols, and ritual notes. They recovered the notebook, and for the first time, the justice system had evidence. Not theories, not suspicion, but street names matching where bodies were found. Body details identical to coroner reports. Notes describing someone killed last night, with precise timestamps. Beneath the bed, they found a map taped on the back. Red circles, white dots, red ink glyphs. Every point matched a known crime scene, and all lines led to the center, an abandoned church on 6th Street. There was no time left. That night, officers surrounded the church. No lights, no doors, but a back window was forced open. Inside, the air reeked of candle wax and dried blood. A ritual circle, half-burnt rope forming its edge. On the ground, a coat soaked in fresh blood, origin unknown, and on the wall behind the altar, scrawled in charcoal, "The 11th ritual is incomplete. I have failed." By sunrise, police spotted Greenwood 2 blocks away. He was walking, slowly, not running. When they ordered him to the ground, he complied, wordless. They searched him. A folding knife, blood-stained. A small notebook labeled Elmer T., Victim 10. And in the inside pocket, a handful of salt wrapped in paper. At the station, Vaughn Greenwood still said nothing. Didn't ask for a lawyer. Didn't invoke his rights. Didn't resist. Just stared into the one-way mirror, like someone or something was staring back. When asked why he killed, he curled his lips. A faint, twitching smile. "I didn't kill anyone," he said. "I just brought them where they belonged. It's quieter there." With Thomas's statement, the physical evidence, and the ritual logs, the court denied bail. After nearly a year of investigation and trial, Greenwood was sentenced to life in prison for 9 murders. The rest couldn't be charged. The victims had no names, no relatives, no witnesses. Greenwood didn't flinch when the verdict was read. He just looked up at the ceiling. as if something else was waiting for him there. Thomas Redfield recovered. He left Skid Row, but he never really escaped. I see his eyes in my sleep, he told a reporter years later. Not because I'm afraid he'll kill me, but because I'm afraid. I understand him. I was that hopeless once. But he wasn't begging for life. He wanted silence. Los Angeles County Courthouse, March 1907. Courtroom 4 felt colder than usual, not because of the air conditioning, but because no one in that room felt truly alive. Vaughn Greenwood sat at the defendant's table like a misplaced black stone in the middle of a gallery. No handcuffs, no outbursts, no defense. Just sitting, silent, both hands resting neatly on his knees, like a man waiting for a bus that's running late. In front of him sat a seasoned team of prosecutors, veterans of serial murder trials. They brought evidence, the notebook, the bloodied knife, Thomas Redfield's testimony, the murder map, the autopsy reports, all of it laid out with inescapable logic. But to Greenwood, it might as well have been scraps of paper drifting through a desert. Not a single blink, not a single flicker of concern. The trial opened in a strange, sterile quiet. No media circus, no protesters, no grieving families, no one held up photos, no one cried, no one screamed for justice, because Greenwood's victims were already forgotten long before they died. No names, no relatives, no goodbyes. A lone reporter, assigned to cover the trial, later wrote, "I've seen killers weep, scream, deny, unravel, but Greenwood just sat there, like the court was trying a shadow." When it came time for the defense, the public attorney said just one sentence: "My client chooses not to make a statement." The court spent 3 weeks hearing testimony, examining every piece of evidence. Some jurors said they felt physically chilled reading Greenwood's notes. Less blood next time. Do it at night to maintain quiet. Aged wine seems more effective. One entry even included estimated victim heart rates by hour. A judge muttered aloud, breaking protocol. He didn't just kill, he engineered death. On sentencing day, Greenwood wore a faded white shirt, no tie, no cuffs. When the sentence was read, life in prison for 9 counts of first-degree murder, he gave a barely visible nod, like hearing the final note of a song he'd memorized long ago. The judge asked if he had any final words. Greenwood stood, looked toward the courtroom doors, not at the people, but at the light spilling in from the hallway. And he said, "I don't think I'm evil. I just don't think I belong here. I don't want people to live forever. I just want them to be quiet." Then he sat down, as if the trial had never happened. And maybe to him, it hadn't. No one stood after the verdict. No applause, no tears, no embraces. Officers led Greenwood out, jurors left in silence, and the courtroom, where pain was supposed to find resolution, was left with nothing but wind whispering through the cracks, like all emotion had been drained from it years ago. Greenwood was sent to California State Prison. No visitors, no petitions for his death, no campaigns for his release. And in the years that followed, he never said another word. The Vaughn Greenwood case was never studied in universities, no TV dramatization, no million-download podcast. Only the few who looked into his eyes and never forgot. Because in those eyes, there wasn't darkness. There was perfect emptiness. Some killers become legends. Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, John Wayne Gacy. Their names appear in headlines, in textbooks, on t-shirts, in Netflix shows. And Vaughn Greenwood, most people don't even know who he was, even though he killed at least 9 people, maybe 11, maybe more. He had no symbol, no infamous quote, no strange fan base. All he had was emptiness. And maybe that's the most terrifying thing of all. Skid Row lived on. After Greenwood, more bodies were found, dead from hunger, from overdose, from random violence. But no one carved faces. No one scattered salt. No one left a wine bottle by the corpse. Greenwood's death didn't change the city. It didn't fix the shelters. It didn't draw more media to the homeless. Everything went back to how it was, as if nothing had ever happened. Thomas Redfield, the only survivor, left Los Angeles soon after the trial, changed his name, moved states, never appeared in public again. A journalist reached him in 1982 and received just one handwritten letter. He didn't kill me. He showed me I'd already been dead for a long time. Since that day, I've only lived to avoid becoming him. But whenever it gets too quiet, I get scared. Because I know he never hated noise. He was just waiting for silence deep enough to perform. In state prison, Greenwood spoke to no one. Didn't read newspapers, didn't write letters, didn't accept books. He only wrote, in the notebook issued to all inmates. Every month, a warden reviewed its contents. It was always the same: concentric circles, mouthless faces, a knife beside a chalice, an upside-down candle. One psychiatrist read through them and said, "He's not psychotic. He's not insane. He just lives in a language we don't understand. And in that world, silence is sacred speech." In 2022, Greenwood died of organ failure behind bars. No one claimed the body. He was cremated under the standard procedure for unclaimed inmates. The only things he left behind were 12 notebooks. No words, only drawings. They're stored in evidence archives, not open to the public. One archivist once reviewed them, then left the room without saying a word. When asked why, he simply said, "They're not scary like horror movies. They're scary because they don't need explaining." It's like he never wanted to be understood. Years later, someone proposed teaching the Greenwood case in criminal psychology courses, but no one followed through. He didn't fit a clinical profile, didn't kill methodically, had no distinct pathology. All he had was perfect absence in the data. And that's what silenced the room. A forensic psychologist once said, "Greenwood isn't a who, he's a what." What happens when a person disappears from the system so completely they no longer belong to the species. He wasn't a monster. He was the void society left behind, and then it swallowed us back. Vaughn Greenwood's legacy isn't in his conviction. It's not in records. It's not in anything searchable by name. It's in the place no one wants to look, in the eyes of the homeless curled beneath a bank awning, in the sound of footsteps at 3 a.m. in empty alleyways, in the silence between passing sirens, in how we choose not to see what we don't want to believe. Because if Greenwood is real, then we must admit we created him, not with violence, but with indifference. Some cases leave behind the truth. Some cases leave behind questions. But the case of Vaughn Greenwood leaves behind a void. No relatives showed up in court. No victim was called by their real name. No memory was returned to the dead, and no one really talked about him after it was over. Greenwood didn't appeal, left no final statement. He lived another 25 years in prison, never gave an interview, never confessed, never denied. When he died, the prison issued no announcement. No one knows the exact time of death, only that he was found in the early morning, eyes open, mouth closed, a small trace of blood on his lip, possibly from organ failure, or possibly the last part of a ritual he never got to finish. To this day, no one knows for certain how many people Greenwood killed. 9 confirmed. 2 more suspected. Maybe 11. Maybe more. Maybe. No one knows. And no one wants to. Because what set Vaughn Greenwood apart wasn't the number. It wasn't the method. It wasn't the motive. It was the way he forced silence. Not through violence. Not through threat. But with something stronger than fear. Indifference. He didn't want to be remembered. He left no signature, wanted no fame, had no mission, and we, the outsiders, didn't want to remember him either, because to remember him would mean remembering deaths no one cried over, people who died never having been acknowledged as alive. Greenwood's victims weren't names, they were people with no files, no social profiles, no photos, no one searching for them, no one remembering the look in their eyes. They were shadows in the city's vision. And Greenwood, he didn't choose them because they were weak. He chose them because he knew killing them wouldn't make waves. No monuments would rise. No novels would be written. No flowers laid where they fell. And he was right. Search his name online, and you'll find a few articles, a few dry documents, a short Wikipedia entry. No films, no podcasts, no bestsellers, only coroner's notes. And the same descriptions repeated like his rituals. Throat slashed, face carved, wine spilled, salt ring around the head. A ritual, not to summon demons, but to summon forgetting sooner. Maybe Greenwood didn't fully understand what he was doing. Maybe he suffered from deep mental illness. Maybe he was abused, starved, abandoned as a child. We don't know. And truthfully, maybe we don't want to. Because if we knew, we couldn't stay outside it anymore. We'd have to ask, who allowed him to take shape like that? Who didn't notice when he began to fall? And who stayed quiet long enough for him to think silence was the truth? I have no conclusion for this case, no advice, no moral compass, only a lingering feeling, like walking into a room no one lives in anymore, but still getting chills. Vaughn Greenwood was a killer, a ritual, a verse repeated in darkness, but he was also a mirror of neglect, a reflection with no face, because the face had long been carved away by our own hands. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.